Hello and welcome to Thinking Aloud from WPNC and Go Donate, the podcast where we get together and share our thoughts about fundraising, advertising and more. We're here to help charities find new donors, keep existing ones, and make the donation process easier than ever. If you like what you hear, we'd love to chat. All our details are in the bio.
Hello, welcome to today's WPNC podcast on legacy fundraising. I'm Hannah Wallis, Fundraising Strategy Director at WPNC, and joining me today is Sector Legacy Specialist Gail Cookson. Hello. We're at a really interesting time for legacies. The days of early adoption are gone, which means the challenge now is cutting through and keeping messages fresh and engaging.
Absolutely, Hannah. With far more support for legacies across the sector and increased investment, legacy marketing now looks a lot more like other marketing streams than it did years ago.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I joined the Legacy Arena, a large disability charity, with no legacy experience, actually. I was tasked with taking a very strong legacy programme and DMifying it was the brief. So measuring performance, buying share of voice, it was a fascinating challenge. So it was met with a considerable amount of scepticism by the team. I even spoke at a sector conference fearing I'd be lynched because legacies are different. But I did stand by my belief that marketing is marketing.
Well, that's a bold move, Hannah. But as the legacy marketing discipline matures, we've scaled and optimized these approaches, making them standard across large parts of the sector. But now, where do we get our next surge of much needed growth, do you think?
Well, it's a great question, and a lot of boards are talking about it at the moment.
Sure.
I actually think, and my team will laugh at me saying this, that we need to go back now to the important element of the nuance of legacy fundraising, and that is the people side of things. Mm-hmm. So, of course, one-to-one relationships, influencing people, being human, that is the original relationship marketing. But how do we look at that stream, which has been there all the time, and apply it to what has now become the established legacy marketing?
Yeah, and I think that there are methods within marketing communications that we can build into our creative and insights work to maximize this. However, I believe now is the time to go back to internal relationships.
So one of the strengths of legacy marketing and investment in its own right for legacy marketers to have a budget, because I remember days where people just didn't have money to spend on marketing.
Or lost it first.
Yes, because obviously the legacies come anyway. Budget can run over the Now, it's been great that the professionalism and the track has been recognised, but there's been, I think, a bit of a side effect, which is it's also allowed siloification of legacy marketing, which for colleagues, volunteers, even board members, in a way could be a little bit convenient because it kind of absolves people of having to have those, in inverted commas, awkward conversations.
Sure.
So that is a bit of a missed opportunity. But it is no surprise that at the recent SME and Fraud Award, collaboration has come back as one of the really key themes in the sector.
Yeah, I think actually collaboration has been doing its job quite well in certain places. So, for example, Remember a Charity turns 25 this year. Can you believe that? And so we're actually great as a sector at collaborating externally. But that, as you say, is a silo in itself in terms of legacy marketing. So what I think we need to think about really is that old adage of all roads lead to legacies. I think about it from an internal perspective, and that everyone can be a legacy ambassador, whether or not you're the chair of trustees or receptionist. It's about everybody having that inner voice saying, what can I do? And not in a ambulance chasing way, but in a discreet way. And you were saying that wonderful example of National Trust recently. And I think that's going to be the way forward for the next few years, certainly.
Just to fill in people that are listening on that example, as a result of some legacy training that the National Trust did, one of their rangers managed to secure a legacy gift of a couple of farms, which...
No mean feat.
And that means somebody was confident enough to suggest it as a result of some training. So there can be some really big wins.
And there are other examples. I mean, IOF have the special interest groups. We've had some other collaborations like Hospices UK, and of course NHS charities together, who've all worked well together to promote legacies in a way that they individually wouldn't have been able to do so before. But I think the meat of our discussion today is going to be about internal collaboration.
And for me, a starting place, especially at the moment, we can't not mention the 2024-2025 state of the fundraising nation. It is not the happiest times for the third sector. Budgets are being squeezed, workforces are being squeezed, and I'm sure many of our listeners will be or will have recently been asked to cut their cloth. Probably the single worst time you could possibly pull legacy marketing spend if you're looking to the 5-year, 10-year return.
Absolutely.
However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't look like really easy trimmings in year to cut legacy marketing. So I've had some really great experiences collaborating with colleagues in brand. The brand and fundraising relationship, in the sector, it really varies and it's always evolving. It can be anything from them and us. Nobody understands each other. During my time at Guide Dogs, I had the pleasure of working on a really successful brand and legacy integrated campaign where brand were really engaged and on board in what we were trying to achieve. And we both knew we'd get the biggest bang for the buck if we worked together, and we briefed creative together. But beginning, it wasn't just a legacy tale on a brand ad. It had a longer form, and it was very much designed to work for legacies as well as brand. I was prepared that the direct response element would be slightly lower than you would expect from a direct response TV ad.
Sure.
I was really pleasantly surprised. So it didn't beat the bank, but it was close enough to keep it in rotation. And I think I'd really encourage people to really start, in the first instance, collaborating with brand colleagues and sharing the responsibility to fund the future of the organisation. So that's my hobby horse on brand. I've got kind of 3 key areas which, Gail, you touched on. In fact, I'm pretty sure that when we first started working together a few years ago, you might have been the one that taught me this. Every staff, our legacy fundraisers and, extending that to volunteers. I mean, they are really, depending on your organisation, some organisations have tens of thousands of volunteers, and getting half of those people to a level where they're happy to just talk about how important legacies is, that's a real Trojan horse in itself. Really, it's just about understanding each audience you're asking to help you and understand what their barriers might be to being an advocate for legacies. The other thing that I think is a bit of a sleeping giant will be collaboration with major donors, philanthropy teams and legacy teams. We're currently working with a charity, doing some facilitation work to bring those 2 teams a bit closer together, just in kind of sharing skills and capabilities so that they're both understanding each other's areas and can have some shared targets. Because I think as time goes on, people's giving in life is likely to become more of a priority, but there are some internal walls that will need to be taken down. But a challenge that should have renewed focus on budgets is that, this funnel, there's a lot of debate at the moment in the sector about, is there still a funnel or is it all bowed? And I don't think there's masses of value debating that. I think you just got to say it a lot and say it confidently. Absolutely. And make sure that you are capturing a response. But again, just making sure that whenever anything above the line, especially, is going out, or even below the line in mail activity to your warm base, just always, what can I do for legacies?
No, I think that's absolutely right. On a slight tangent, just because I've been on a walking holiday in the Isle of Wight, at every gate, the Ramblers Association had an in-mem opportunity and all the signs and like that, which was absolutely perfect for walkers. And then there would be a message about somebody who'd love this walk or whatever. And as we know, in-mem is often a good way into legacies. Mm-hmm. So it was a very simple thing. Sponsor a gate, made a difference for a bench. And every time we went through the gate, I thought, oh yes, Ramblers, fantastic little opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's one.
There's another one, yeah. And that would have required collaboration for the Ramblers with their operations team and presumably land.
Yeah. There were some gates going nowhere, but anyway, definitely going through a path which was useful.
Really, we just highlighted just a few of the options. But I think making sure that you as, the legacy fundraiser, an individual giving fundraiser, fundraising director, whoever you are, whatever seat you're in, it's time to look up from the marketing plans a bit and look at your internal assets. And that's mainly your people and other spend as well. And just build relationships, because that's where legacy marketing started and it's where it will end. It's just really important that working together, that the benefit that we have now as legacy leaders or managers is that the business case for legacies is very, very much made and accepted in the sector. And I think that maybe wasn't true 15 years ago. I think, and apologies if you're listening, is frustration if you're in an organisation that's still fighting to get to that table. I think the tides are turning in the right direction.
But I think it means creating the environment from the top. So that's at trustee level, at senior leadership level, that it is to be encouraged for people to work together and think about how best. And it makes sense, when, as you've said, that resources and everything are tight. So the name of the game, I absolutely believe, is collaboration, so that it will help getting shared goals achieved.
Absolutely. I think getting your trustees on board is really important, and starting with the executive board as well. It can really, really vary. I think, again, people understand it more than they used to, but not exclusively. So trying as best you can to kind of build one or two key relationships, just so that you've got, as you said, that leadership from the top and signalling that when a legacy colleague approaches somebody in the business to say, how could you help? They're responding with a yes, if we can do it this way, rather than a no, because. And I think that's quite a shift in some organisations. And that's where kind of some senior leadership can really benefit.
It might be that, there have to be soft credits provided.
Yeah. I was a big fan of the teams and the finance colleagues, however, were less fans.
Yeah.
It's all about, I'm going to say this as a planner, everything comes down to your audience. And this is no less true with your colleagues and staff as it is when you're marketing. Understand what drives them, understand what the barriers are, and find a way through. And then you'll get the result that everybody needs. Right. So I think very interesting discussion, obviously, tip of the iceberg. But thank you to everybody who's got to the end with us. We are always available for further conversations, rantings over coffees or wine. But yes, until next time, keep waving the flag for legacy fundraising, really.
Absolutely. Many thanks, Helen.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found that useful. To hear upcoming Thinking Aloud podcasts, subscribe now. And if you think we could help you, get in touch. Our details are in the bio.